Hey, Kelber here with Mem, and today we'll be looking at everything you need to know about Remembrance MC. They are a crazy strong unit with a lot of cool potential and a brand new mechanic that can help boost older characters. I'll be explaining how they work, including the new Memosprite mechanics, but an in-depth Memosprite video or two will be coming sometime soon as well. Then I'll be reviewing their amazing free Eidolons, as well as explaining their best relics and Lycan options, as well as teams and synergies that love this new character. Like and sub if this helped, share to anyone that needs help, and let's begin. This unit is so exciting. So, they are our very first Remembrance unit and our Ice element. Among base stats, their defense is decently high, their speed is okay, and their energy cost is quite high, but we'll see why that's not too bad later on. Remembrance units have new traces to level, but don't worry, it should all cost the same in total as another Path unit. You want to focus on your Memosprite skill first, followed by your Memosprite talent. Then you can upgrade as needed with the MC's abilities. Ultimate first for damage, and skill and talent will help with Mem's HP, but aren't mandatory to max. So onto the MC's kit. First off, let's look at Memosprites. Again, I'll have a more detailed look in a different video. Memosprites have their own action in the turn order and can do automatic attacks or use abilities on allies. They can be attacked by enemies like anyone else, they can also die, and they can also be the subject of buffs like anyone else. AoE buffs can target Memosprites and buff them, but single target ones outside of Sunday will not buff them unless they are selected. So for example, Bronya would have to skill Mem for them to get buffs. Sunday can skill the MC and both units would get buffs because that's his kit. Now, unless stated in a kit in the future, it seems Memosprites copy the same stats as their wearer pre-combat, barring specifically HP and speed. And these are the stats that specifically show up in the stat screen. As for Memosprite's HP and speed, they are set in the talent or an ability of the Remembrance unit. This means any in-combat buffs from relics and Lycons, like basically most 4-piece relic sets and planars, will not apply to the Memosprite unless specifically indicated, like in the brand new 3.0 relics. However, 2 pieces and effects from 4 pieces that do affect the wearer's stats pre-combat, the ones that are unconditional, will still apply to the Memosprite. Basically, you can see what Mem stats will look like by going to their page in the character screen and swapping stuff around on the MC. And so now let's check out the MC's abilities. Their skill will summon the Memosprite Mem. If they're already present, then you instead heal them and grant them 10% charge. The heal is quite substantial and helps relieve pressure off of your sustain, and we'll see more about this charge in just a bit. Their talent sets the stats of Mem's HP and speed. The speed is an initial 130, but that can be buffed by speed buffs in combat, and the HP is scaling depending on your MC's HP. Then, when a total of 10 energy is regenerated by all allies in total, Mem will gain 1% charge. This energy can be from anything that gives energy in the game. So enemies hitting you, you using your abilities, you getting kills, you getting energy from your kit, quid pro quo, energy light cones, Sunday ult, Warhor ult, and using energy regeneration percent counts as getting more energy for most sources in the game. This also counts for this talent and thus speeds up charging speed a little. And the MC's ultimate will summon Mem again, but no benefits are applicable if they're already present on the field. It will then grant Mem 40% charge and then they'll make Mem attack, dealing damage to all enemies scaling on their stats. The buffs applied to the Memosprite here will benefit damage more than buffs applied to RMC. Finally, for the MC's kit, their technique. It's a dimension technique, so no stacking with other dimensions, but its effects are well worth it. When entering battle after using it, all enemies will be delayed by 50%, which is enormous and not commonly seen outside of break teams. The enemies will also take a little damage. Enemies afflicted with this delay will have their speed at around 66% effectiveness for their first turn. And so this means unless you're incredibly slow and or the enemy is incredibly fast, your whole team should be taking their first action before any enemy dares to. And because it's not tied to any crowd control effect, this is not crowd control, and therefore goes through 100% CC res, for example the Cocolia Apocalyptic Shadow. And it's a dimension, so this happens every single new wave. This means amazing survivability benefits for any team. It means you can get your first rotation off real easy, it avoids annoying debuff downtime, it can help with ramp up, it can help survivability in zero sustain teams. It just helps so much. There are cases where you don't want to use it, for example if you rely on hit RNG energy for your low cycle clears, or you need enemies to take turns quickly, but otherwise this technique is baller. Now Mem has 2 traces of its own, and we can finally understand what this charge is for. The Mem Respite talent will grant all allies crit damage scaling off of Mem's crit damage, plus an extra flat percentage. This is like Bronya's ultimate crit damage, but permanent and stronger. Then it sets up how Mem's abilities will be used in combat. If they are under 100% charge, they will use Baddie's Trouble automatically. If they are at 100% charge, they immediately take action and can select one ally unit to use a different ability called Let Me Help You. So accumulating all that charge is so that we can get Mem to act and use a new ability. Then there are two bonus passives. When Mem is summoned, they gain an immediate 50% charge, and when Mem disappears, the MC's action is advanced by 25%. So maybe we'll have a meta where we actually try and get Mem to die, so they get 50% free charge and the MC moves faster. How dark. But now finally onto Mem's in-combat abilities. So when they are under 100% charge, they will use Baddie's Trouble automatically on their turn. This attacks a random enemy 4 times and then attacks all enemies. If they are at 100% charge from your abilities or your team accumulating energy, Mem will immediately take action from their talent. Then they can use Let Me Help You on an ally. This will advance the action of an ally and that ally alone by 100%, which is amazing, and then grant them Mem support for 3 turns. The action advance can work on Remembrance MC themselves, funnily enough, since it's Mem that does the action advance. It doesn't work on Mem self though. And the action advance can be tuned around, but it's not going to be 100% reliable as Mem's charge can be RNG. But in practice at least it was pretty chill and worked out pretty well. This is because the MC has ways of giving large charge amounts that you can use to make sure Mem acts when you want them to. Now Mem's support to the buff given is absolutely awesome. When an instance of damage is done by the target with this buff, true damage equivalent to a percentage of the original damage will be inflicted. True damage doesn't count as using an attack and it isn't buffed by anything. Instead, it takes what you just did damage-wise and basically echoes it by a percentage. So true damage ignores defense and res, but technically is still affected by them since the damage is based on your original damage that goes through these multipliers. It just doesn't double dip. This mechanic works for break damage, dot damage, super break damage, crit damage, non-crit damage. It does not discriminate. Just remember, it only applies to the unit and the unit's attacks that Mem's support is on. So if Kafka detonates Black Swan's Arcana and her own shocks, it will only give true damage to her detonated dots, not Black Swan's. So imagine you have Def Ignore, Res Pen, big attack buffs, all to do a big ultimate from Fei Xiao. Well, all of that is then further multiplied by this true damage amount. At talent level 7, this is 30%, and it actually gets higher as we'll see after, which means you can slap at least a final 1.3 times multiplier to all damage done in all attacks. So units that have immense buff saturation like Jing Liu, teams that might have it like Robin Tingyun teams, and just anyone in general will absolutely love having a true and undiluted final multiplier. If we get units that give out a lot of different buffs in smaller amounts, they'd also benefit from this true damage. This buff lasts 3 turns, and so most units you choose can have this up permanently. High speed and action advance will make it struggle on uptime though, so make it count. And there is zero indication of not being able to use this ability on multiple allies, and so I tested it in game, and it works on multiple allies. So if you can supercharge their charge generation or have allies that take a long time to take turns, well you can stack this on multiple units. Robin, for instance, yeets herself out of the action order, but true damage does indeed work for every single physical damage proc she does. We'll talk more about this insane combo later. Moza disappears from the action order, but can still use this. Slower units like Yun Li can also use this to great effect. So that's everything the character can do in game, but they also have traces and they also have Eidolons, so let's continue. Remembrance MC's first passive just makes things even better. They get a mini Von Whack with 30% advance, and when Mem is first summoned, they gain 40% charge. With 50% guaranteed charge from summoning them, and then the charge from RMC gaining energy from using the skill, Mem starts off at a very high 93% charge, meaning they can action advance and start applying true damage after your team's very first rotation. Their second passive grants Mem 5% charge when using the Baddie's Trouble attack. Since Mem sprites, as far as Mem goes, generate 10 energy when acting, this means 6% charge every Baddie's Trouble, which greatly helps with getting to the good stuff. And finally, if you thought 30% true damage wasn't enough, well the ally target that has Mem support will get additional true damage scaling on their max energy. For every 10 past 100, an additional 2% up to 20%. So yeah, enjoy doing 1.5 times your original damage, not including crit damage buffs, the action advance, and more. They get crit damage, some attack, and some HP in trace bonuses. The crit damage is nice for scaling their buffs. As for Eidolons, we'll get them all for free, I just don't know if we can get E6 instantly in 3.0. E1 gives an additional buff and effect to Mem support. First, a 10% CR buff to the ally target, so even more crit value. Then, the effects of Mem support now also apply to the Memo Sprite, and that works for the true damage. So this means Remembrance MC will be an amazing support for Aglaya and future Remembrance DPS. E2 will grant the Trailblazer 8 energy when an ally Memo Sprite outside of Mem takes action. This can trigger once per Trailblazer turn. It further buffs Remembrance synergy, but I cannot test it yet since Aglaya is in the second half. It sounds like a really strong Eidolon and shortens their rotation by 1 turn if the math is right. Now quickly on the topic of E3 and E5, they will actually be giving a level increase to Memo Sprite traces by 1 level. For the max is usually 6, and now it can be 7. This will buff the true damage multiplier and the crit damage buffs from Mem. E4 adds synergy with non-energy units, these being Feixiao and Acheron. RMC can truly do it all. Mem will gain 3% charge when this ally actively uses an ability, which is lovely, since they cannot generate energy for the charge generation. Actively using an ability does not mean stuff like follow-ups though, as far as my testing has shown, they have to press a button, sorry Feixiao. And then, since they don't count as having a max energy cost either for the A6, they also get an extra true damage multiplier increase of 6%, equivalent to having 130 max energy. E6 finally sets the ultimate's crit rate to 200%. Since we'll be stacking tons of crit damage onto the Trailblazer, this means we get a bit more damage out of our cute friend. So, how do we want to build our brand new MC? They want to be fast, they want to be tanky, and they want to have some crit damage. It's a classic action advance support character. They also do a bit of damage here and there, but it's based on Mem stats and it's nothing too crazy. Now, I bet we are going to see this mistake made plenty of times, so I'll address it now. There's no point running the ice set or the banana set on the MC. Friends Together, the crit damage buff, is based on Mem's crit damage. Scaling Mem's crit damage is the way to buff it. Crit damage buffs that apply to only the MC mid-combat, therefore, are pretty much useless. And also as another note, you don't need to spam crit damage on them just like you don't with the other units like Sunday and Bronya. The scaling is not crazy and you'd rather hit speed breakpoints. So for building the MC, you have a couple options. The brand new set gives attack percent, some speed when your Memo Sprite is present, and some crit damage to both the wearer and Memo Sprite after the sprite attacks. Here we can see it applies to the Memo Sprite, so it's actually useful for scaling the buff. However, 30% crit damage is about 4% crit damage to the team, and is therefore not game-changing. So you can use this set, but it doesn't offer anything revolutionary. Instead, there are better alternatives to hit speed or action count goals. 2 Hackspace and 2 Sagados grants 12% speed guaranteed at the start of the battle, which is much better than an in-combat 6%. I recommend using this as it does not take much farming. But if you want to go further beyond and maximize the MC's turns and therefore Mem's charge gains, the Wind set will be the best at that. I can however see moments where the Wind set might make you too fast and ruin tuning with Mem's 100% advance, so be careful. For planars, go for an energy planar with Lushaka, Penacony or Vonwak. Vonwak will make you act insanely early and have no troubles getting Mem out before the rest of your team. But also make sure Mem isn't advancing themselves before the DPS with this setup. It is possible to break your turn order with Vonwak. But I do think Vonwak is the best option if you set it up right, as you can achieve 2 Mem supports in the very first cycle, as the MC will act 3 times in the first cycle with at least 154 speed and this planar set. For main stats, you'll always want a crit damage chest to scale the buff, speed boots too, you should never go slow, and an energy rope. These don't want to change. The only thing you can change is your orb, where you can go defensive if going for 0 sustain teams, or ice damage if you want a bit of power out of Mem. And so for a stat goal, you can aim for something like 160 crit damage, a good amount of defensive stats, and then a bunch of speed. I'd aim for 160 speed if you can, with 154 being the minimum if you're going for a Vonwak setup. But lower speeds are still fine and may even be advised if your Mem acts too early on their first rotation. And if you prefer more offensive capabilities, then you can drop some HP or def and go into attack and more crit damage. Or you can go further into survivability and get effect rares. For Lycones, you have 2 options and both are completely free to play. First off, Shadowburn, a 3-star Lycone that regenerates 1 skill point and 20 energy for the unit after summoning the Memo Sprite for the very first time in battle. This means better SP economy on the first turn and some energy. Now this energy works of course with Mem and makes your initial charge count slightly higher, which can change how you want your turn order to look like. So be careful using this, don't just use it because someone told you so. More on charge rotations later. The energy can be used to gain an immediate ultimate just after Mem's first action, which should be a 100% charge skill. This means an immediate 40 plus charge for Mem after expending the initial 100, but ulting a bit later is fine too, you just use a basic on top of the usual rotation. But I can see this light cone's used in low cycle clears to inch out an extra ultimate. By the way, we'll also see energy rotations in just a bit. If you want to play safe with a bit more team power rather than the earlier ultimate, or have a turn order that cannot use this previous cone, then you can instead use Victory in a Blink. And this is the MOC shop cone and is completely free to play, which is very lovely. You get crit damage for a tiny bit of Mem scaling, but then you get team-wide damage buffs when Mem uses their ability on an ally. It's good for any team outside of Break. The Fade Shout Battle Pass cone is DPS oriented, and likewise with the 3-star Reminiscence cone, so you can avoid both of these on RMC unless you want to build them DPS, I guess. Now, before we finish with teams, let's talk energy as well as Mem charge generation. Energy first, and let's start with the first rotation ultimates to combo in from the light cone section. This is your traditional first ultimate rotation on Remembrance MC with an energy rope. You skill, your allies take turns, Mem gets to 100% charge and skills someone. Then on the second turn you basic, Mem takes another action, and you can ult. You can ult before Mem's second action with luck or external energy or RMC's E2 proccing, but it's not necessary as you're not going to be wasting charge percent anyway. If you have the Shadowburn light cone, here is that rotation. The light cone gives an extra 20 base energy, so you're very close to a first turn ultimate after Mem's initial action. You don't want to ult before Mem acts anyway, as you'll waste all that charge. If you get hit for enough, have Ralmei's light cone for example, or run a Remembrance unit alongside RMC with an E2 proc, you can get that immediate ult to fast forward your Mem's charging. After that first ultimate is done, onto the standard rotations. With an energy rope alone and E0 RMC, you can do a skill into 3 basics and basically hit your ultimate. When RMC or Mem are hit, RMC will get energy from both of them, so it's a very low chance that you don't hit the 4 turn. If you skill again instead of basic, then you guarantee it. With a 5% energy planar on top, you don't gain a substantial bonus, but it does inch you a bit closer to RNG 3-turn ultimates. And at E2 with the second Remembrance unit in the team, you can start activating the E2 procs that give out 8 energy. With an energy rope and 5% energy planar, you hit pretty much bang on the 3-turn ultimate, which is going to be very strong when we get Aglaya. Now for charge generation, let's check out the very first 100% charge skill named Let Me Help You. With no energy cone, we skill on RMC and gain 50% base charge for summoning Mem, 40% charge for the very first Mem summon, and 3-ish charge from RMC's skill. We thus need around 60 to 70 energy gain total from our next ally actions to get Mem to act as soon as possible, but we want them to ideally act after our DPS. So this can be 3 ally turns. This could be 2 ally skills with energy regen ropes. This could even be 1 ally skill if they generate enough energy, for example Firefly's unenhanced skill. The graphic might look like it's tricky, but just know that you usually want only 1 ally in between Remembrance MC and your DPS for Mem to not act too early. Basically just test in game and see what works. Now if we have the Shadowburn light cone equipped, we need about 41 energy from allies taking turns just after. This is where it can get a bit scary, as if RMC is first and is followed by your supports, then Mem will act too soon and in front of your DPS, which can be a waste of action advance. If you have a support like Robin that can abuse this first advance, then it's actually not so bad. Now this is just an example to show you where it can mess up. And if this wasn't Robin here, then a 30 energy skill can still proc Mem if you have too much energy regen. Now after that very first Let Me Help You, you are then dropped down to 0% charge. With ally energy gain alone, you'd have to generate 1000 energy for Mem to regain their special ability, but that's where RMC supports their best new buddy. Outside of energy gains, an ult from RMC gives 40% charge, a skill from them 10%, and then Mem's regular ability gives an extra 5%. Mem taking action also generates 10 energy, which is an extra 1% every time. So skill and ultimate and Mem attack every rotation guarantees about 60% charge, meaning your team should be able to generate the rest soon afterwards. Another Mem attack is another 6%, and they immediately take action at 100% anyway, so it's fine if they have to attack again. So now, finally, onto teams and synergies. I will probably make another video specifically on this if enough people want it, because who needs sleep? Some notable synergies I first want to get out. Robin and Remembrance MC is diabolical. Sunday Robin is already OP, but what if you don't have Sunday? And what if you want Robin to get a first turn ultimate to let your team abuse Concerto as early as possible? Sunday would have to skill Robin, which he can't do as she is Harmony, or use his ult on her, which means some problems for SB economy and some lack of buffs on the main carry. RMC, however, or Mem rather, can advance nearly anyone, just like Bronya. So you can Robin skill, Mem skill Robin, and she basics. Depending on when you do this, you just then Robin ult after your team's first rotation is complete. This lets you get 2 turns for your whole team in Concerto in the first cycle. It doesn't just stop there though, Mem's support exists, and Mem's support will be working on every single Robin damage proc that happens and applying true damage. That doesn't break the game of course, but giving her a 1.42 times damage increase is not bad as a little bonus. You can even keep this up for her second Concerto without having to skill her again if you regen ult for her fast enough. And because Robin advances everyone, including Memo sprites, your Mem can easily get another Let Me Help You in the first cycle. This means another single action advance for your DPS this time, and it means Robin still keeps her true damage buff up alongside the DPS also now getting it. Sunday is another great synergy with the MC. He can advance Remembrance MC, who is kind of like a Harmony but not actually one, bypassing his restrictions. He also advances Mem. Only Robin can do this otherwise, but only once an ult. And Bronya and Sparkle can advance either RMC or Mem, but not both at the same time. Giving the MC an extra turn when needed can let you set up cool action advance combos with a hypercarry. And Sunday provides so many buffs, RMC a decent amount too, that makes the true damage even more important to have. Sunday's ultimate also regenerates at least 40 energy every time and can go higher with energy cost units. This translates to even better charge gains. This duo is going to be insane for Remembrance DPS. And for a similar reason, Huohuo gains immense value with the new MC. She gives percentage-based energy, but it's to the whole team, so this is a whole lot of charge generation for Mem. With Sunday on top, you start generating so much. Her talent will also proc every time Mem takes a turn as they count as an ally, which means a tiny bit better energy generation for Huohuo. As for DPS, I think the new MC can work in so many places. Ideally in hypercarry positions to allow for multiple buffers that can let their true damage shine, and ideally in crit hypercarry teams due to crit damage and rate scaling, so your classic crit carries can use them. Anyway, you'd use a Bronya back in the day, and Sunday in some cases these days, you can use the new MC and their different buff types. Just remember to watch out for advance forward from the carry or from allies destroying Mem support uptime. And I think they will be one of the best units so far for Zero Sustain teams, as they make all of those buffs go further beyond, provide survivability benefits, and have action advance, which is OP for low cycle clears already. The fact that the advance works on Robin is another massive benefit too for Zero cycling. So first off, Remembrance DPS are going to love the new MC. They are designed pretty universally, but a lot of extra synergies will be unlocked when you have an additional Memo sprite on the field. The MC will get even more energy and a shorter rotation, and both the Memo Trainer and the Memo Sprite will get Mem's true damage thanks to the MC's E1. So I cannot wait to test Aglaya in a few weeks. With Sunday on top, you'll have a devastating duo for any Remembrance DPS. But for now, the first category of units that can synergize well with the Trailblazer are high max energy characters, like Argenti, Yun Li, and the brand new The Hurter who has an energy cost of 220. They will love Remembrance MC due to even higher true damage scaling than other characters. And having action advance means of course they get more energy for their massive ult costs. You compare them with Robin to abuse her buffs and the RMC Robin combo, or you compare them with Sunday to abuse that combo with more ultimates for the main carry. Either works, and it depends on what you or the carry prefers. For the Hurter's synergy specifically, Remembrance MC and Mem attack a bunch, which really helps stack up her interpretation for insane damage multipliers. The Hurter also self-buffs a ton, which is great for the true damage scaling. If your sub DPS is geared to ulting as much as possible and not necessarily damage, like a Passkey Serval, then the hyper-focus buffs of the MC are just fine over a Robin. The Hurter also gains a lot of fixed energy from ally attacks, and so your AoE teammates are enabling both the Hurter and Remembrance MC. Very formidable duo though, especially as a completely free-to-play teammate for the Hurter. And for Yun Li specifically, she taunts enemies and has high aggro with her cone, and paired with her energy gaining trace from being hit as well as her counters, you have a unit that will generate so many Mem charges. She is also naturally built to be slow, which means easy uptime on the true damage. Yun Li also loves Robin, and you can do the double true damage combo here too. And since Yunli is going to be too slow to abuse the action advance from the very first Let Me Help You from Mem, it means Robin can take it just fine and start up the combo. Fei Xiao also likes Remembrance MC as they provide action advance like a Bronya or Sunday on top of attacking a bunch. Yes, every RMC attack and every Mem attack count as flying Ori stacks for Fei Xiao. Fei Xiao's best support is Robin, so naturally again you have an amazing use of the RMC Robin combo. And since Robin advances Mem as well as RMC, more and more Ori stacks. You will have to go no sustain ideally for this team, as it would then allow a sub DPS of March, Morza or Topaz to pop off with everything on top. I actually think Morza is probably the best sub DPS in this specific team, since he is the only one that can utilize RMC and Mem's attack frequency to maximum advantage. Topaz requires follow-ups most of the time for Numbi actions, and March requires specifically Fei Xiao attacks. Boot Hill also did very well with the new MC and Fugue Rame team in Apocalyptic Shadow. Again, Zero Sustain teams will go insane with Remembrance MC, and Boot Hill loves Zero Sustain teams already. Luckily, Boot Hill doesn't need Super Break unlike Firefly, so this replacement is much more feasible, and instead we are replacing Sunday rather than the MC here. You lose the energy from Sunday and won't always get an advance, but you gain a lot of true damage scaling. Boot Hill does get a ton of pocket trick shot, especially with Fugue, so it's not too bad on ults anyway. Again, I tested it in Apocalyptic Shadow, and compared to my Sunday Fugue ROM mate team, it cleared only a bit slower, despite RMC being completely free. When you need more ultimates like in MOC, then Sunday is more desirable, but a free unit performing this well is excellent news. So I really hope you enjoyed this video. It took a lot of work, but it was well worth it. This unit is awesome, and let me know what you plan to do with them down below. Like and sub and share to help share all this info, and thanks for watching. It's my amazing YouTube members, and have a good day.